growing weary of running from room to room, practicing one-tooth insurance-driven dentistry? Then stay tuned for the latest episode of The Lionhearted, where Dr. Stephen Rasner will hand you the blueprint for what many call the gold standard of general practice dentistry.
Hi everybody, Dr. Steve Rasner here. Welcome back to The Lionhearted. Reach out to me at my name, Dr. Rasner, D-R-R-A-S-N-E-R at AOL.com. If you want to see where I'm speaking or you want to attend one of my courses in New Jersey that'll teach everything from oral sedation to atraumatic extractions to bone grafting to implant placement based on your background with the implant placement. I can't just do it for anybody. You got to have certain criteria. You can find that at the Rasner Institute, R-A-S-N-E-R, institute.com. Okay, last week I got a little caught up in my rants, and I want to get some more meat and potatoes this week to help you. So I want to talk about this week. I told you last week I went back and I looked at my most popular podcasts, and without a doubt they were things that were related, which I would do too, by the way, maximum productivity or case presentations. And whenever I do an oral sedation one, you guys freak out. And you should, because it's the best predictable, safest oral sedation cocktail, in my opinion, anywhere. And I didn't invent it. Somebody gave it to me 25 years ago named Dr. John Hoare in Alabama. And it's just amazing. And you can't just give the drugs. You got to get a permit from your state, or a permit if you're in Canada or in Europe. You got to check with your governing board of dentistry and make sure you're within the legal limits. But it is hands down amazing. You know, you always say there's not too many things in the world that are too good to be true. This is one of them. 3 pills, 90 minutes before, bam, they're snoring. Wake them up anytime you want. I don't know if I could do what I know I couldn't do what I do without it. So, but that's not where I'm going this week. Let's talk about reaching maximum productivity, which I have done on prior podcasts for you. But I don't think you can talk about this stuff too much. So let's talk about it. I think some of you may be set up to fail, or set up to not achieve maximum productivity. So just the structure of your organization as it stands right now, as you're listening to me on this podcast, prevents you from achieving high success. So let's talk about that for a second. I want to tell you, I have said on other earlier podcasts that I once enjoyed 29, I want you to think about this, consecutive years of increased growth and profitability in my business as a dentist. So that would mean, for example, that you would go right now, if you could achieve a similar success, that you would go to the year 2049. Think about that for a minute. 2048 you would go to. From now to 2048. I may not even be alive. And you, every year, would have increased production, not by working more. I don't mean by working more hours, by being efficient, and more profitability. And I experienced that for 29 years. But I did have 3 down years, which is why I told you the first thing. And those of you that are a young dentist, you may not remember 2009, 10, 11 in the United States. And they were bad years. I had beat 4 recessions prior. I used to refer to myself as recession proof. I was until 2008 and 9. And then I got burned. Our productivity dropped 700 plus thousand over 3 years. Why am I telling you this? Because the way I got out of it is having more meetings. I'm not kidding. I said, I didn't go out and buy equipment to make me more efficient. And I'm not saying that's totally wrong. Actually, I do think it's wrong if that's your first move. I totally think it's wrong. How about that? What you need to do is assess where you're at. And before you do any of that, what you need to do is care enough about to change it. That's why it's called the lion-hearted. You got to be a warrior. You do. You got to be willing not to give up, to fight to the end, and do the right thing. I don't know if this resonates. That's how I talk. That's how I am. Sometime I'll do a couple podcasts on what this dentist has been through in his life, and it'll blow your mind. It makes losing a couple patients or a bad money week look like a day at Storybook Land, which is an amusement park on the East Coast of the United States. That's a subject for another day. So yeah, you got to care about it enough to want to change it. And it's hard to want to meet, because when you're meeting with your team, be it 4 people or 18 or 30, you're not drilling teeth at that point. You're not seating a crown or placing an implant, are you? So in a sense, during that hour that you're meeting, you're losing productivity. That's what I'm asking you to do. That's what I did in 2011 that snapped me out of the slump. We came back 700,000 in 1 year by having meetings every 2 weeks. We used to have a monthly meeting, once a month. It sounds like a good cliche, the monthly meeting. I get it. The problem with the monthly meeting is that it's a month, and a lot of things get forgotten from 1 month to the next, and a lot of things may not get implemented, and you might not know that they didn't get implemented 30 days later. Now, do I have meetings every 2 weeks now? No, I don't, because we've been doing really well for a long time without doing that. I'll tell you what I do these days. I have a lot of mini meetings with certain segments of my organization, and that is ongoing. The clinic, the front desk, the insurance department, or the billing department, I would have to say, in my case, the new patient contact people in my office, marketing. I'm constantly, and I don't love that, and it's tiring, and I especially don't like doing it towards the end of the day. But I will tell you, I never stop. You know why I never stop? You know why you should never stop? Because it's worth it. Yeah, it is. You know, it's a funny joke that they always say, why divorce attorneys are so expensive. The answer to the riddle is because they're worth it. Maybe it's late in the afternoon with these jokes. But anyway, so I got to ask you, are you having meetings? Do you even know where you stand? I've had this talk, and I'm not going to do it on this podcast, but you need to have one meeting at least dedicated. One meeting, and if you want more information, by the way, on what you need to run an efficient meeting, then write to me at the email I gave you at the beginning, and I'll give it to you in a quick blog. And look, man, I hope you get this. This is just about you, Maxim. I don't want you to go start having meetings randomly without rules and regulations or parameters and say, oh, he's full of it. They don't work. They do work. You just have to get substance out of them and be prepared, and I'll tell you how to do that. So, you know, I say this to you because no matter what information I give you, maybe you're set up to fail. Maybe you're spending too much of your time running room to room right now because you haven't taken the time to figure out what you need to do to get out of these toxic insurance plans that you're taking. Which, anybody listening, you can't just flip the switch on Monday and get out of them. You got to give yourself a 1 or 2 year program, maybe even longer. But you begin by analyzing at one of these meetings I'm talking about as to which ones are the most toxic. Because if you're taking 8 plans right now, I assure you, all 8 are not paying you the same amount for every service that you do. So you want to walk into this meeting and delegate to the people in your office who will know the information. And by the way, that just explains what I'm saying. It just reaffirms. When I tell you, you need to have the right people, the right team to reach the levels of success that you hear me allude to in these podcasts, you need to have the right team. Because if you go to your insurance department and say, look, I'm having a meeting next Friday or whatever it is, and you got to pay them for their time, by the way, and it's got to be unscheduled time, whether it's before you start the day, which I would recommend, or at the end of your day, which is a little risky because there's always a chance you could run late. There's always a chance if somebody could burn out and you're not in the mood for that meeting. I've been through every possibility you can give me, which is why I had my meetings and have my meetings to start my day. It's like from 9 to 10 o'clock or 8 to 9, whatever we're doing. And yes, whoever's in that meeting indeed is getting paid. Okay, and you need to be able to go to your insurance department and say, I need the data on all the major services, scaling, root planing, crowns, root canals, dentures, partials, implants, implant crowns. And I want it broken down from everybody we accept, and I want to be able to compare on a spreadsheet what they're paying us. And then I also want to know the number of patients that's in each plan. Okay, do you get me? That's the kind of way you run a meeting. That's how you go into it and don't waste your time. If you go into it and everybody's just eating the donuts and pleasantries you bought that morning and there's no agenda, then don't do a meeting. Okay. And then do you do a morning meeting? A morning meeting every day. Every single day. And I'll send you that agenda on how that's a 5 to 7 minute, but a really important meeting because sometimes you're making something out of nothing. I wrote an article on that. Meaning, I don't mean creating crowns from teeth that don't need crowns. I mean being prepared for that day. How many of you, and I understand it because I've done it, go sometimes into the morning on a Monday through Thursday, and you have no clue who's coming in for hygiene, recall. You have no clue what possible treatment was discussed with those patients coming in on recall that week from prior months and visits and years. You don't even know. You don't know how they're doing with the work that you did. Okay? So there's a sheet. You can call it the hygiene sheet that I can send you. That each of them, I have 5 hygienists. And each of them has their name on it. And the sheet will tell you it's a cliff notes of the patient you're about to walk into. But that's how you handle, and they got to be in on this. Remember my podcast a couple weeks ago, I said, are you in or not? Same with them. Are they in? If they roll their eyes, you don't see it, but you're sensing they're rolling their eyes when you're asking for this information, then you are never going to achieve what I'm asking you to do with that particular staff member. And I wouldn't tell you to just go in on Monday and fire them. Give them one chance. Let me tell you about firing people. And here I am. I'm going on a rant again. I always do this. If you're going to go in and fire them and you think they may have a modicum of worthiness in your organization, then go back and don't hold it in. Don't worry about their feelings. I mean, be professional. Don't use inappropriate words, but just say it the way it is. Say, hey, listen, I had this meeting with you because you've now been here 2 years, and I really think we're at an impasse. I can't tell whether you're in or not. I can't tell whether you're on board. You want to grow with us. I really can't get that. And I'm giving you a chance here because I got one career, one chance. And I'm not going to waste it on 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years with staff members that I don't think are all in. So when I ask for something, I not only want it, I want you to want to give it to me, to make the staff and the organization better. That's the attitude you want, no matter what you're talking about. You want to start using rubber dams in your office for procedures, and you haven't done that before. And your team's not going to love that because it's harder if you haven't done it. It's called change. Change is harder, right? Well, change is hard for lots of us. I'm here to tell you the same thing. You need people that embrace. And if you don't have the right ones, then don't waste the next 5 years trying to change the stripes of a zebra. I wouldn't tell you just fire them. I'd give them a chance. Be passionate the way I'm talking to you. Have them call me and I'll do it for you. No, I was kidding on that one. So, let's go back for a minute. I started this by saying to reach maximum productivity, some of you can't do that because you're not set up for that. So being set up for it means you're doing too many insurance companies and that's your philosophy, and you have too many patients that are centered around what their insurance pays. So naturally, all this that I'm giving you sounds foreign. No, you have to go in and start changing protocols and attitudes and little change. All these things I'm telling you work. I'm telling you they do. There's not one thing I've ever given you on these podcasts that does not work. From the oral sedation I recommend, to a comprehensive treatment planning approach to the patients, to the new patient experience I've laid out, they all work. They all work. And all you have to do is try them the way I'm telling you. But if you have somebody go in and do it half you know what, and not the way I'm trying to get you to do things, no, that's not the same thing. So you got to clear out some of this old clutter. Get rid of some of the insurances. I'm not telling you to get rid of them all right away. You got to revisit the morning meetings. Let me give you an example of morning meeting protocol that leads to instant increase in your soft tissue acceptance. Think about this one. So try to start this in 2 weeks. Have the hygienist look at their schedules a couple days ahead to start with. And on their schedule, their responsibility of this protocol is to list the patients that have had scaling root planing procedures done. Why would I tell you that? Because if you do the Google search on it in the literature, the amount of people that are compliant with what you're asking them to do to maintain optimum periodontal health after scaling and root planing is dismal. So a lot of these patients end up as recare patients and need scaling and root planing again. So guess what happens? They had it done 2 years ago. And your hygienist, let me guess. They come to you and they say, hey, Dr. Rasner, I just want to tell you, she was scaled a couple years ago and she didn't look that good today. And I told her that if this doesn't improve, that we're going to have to, revisit the scale and root. What? What are you talking about? Are you a caretaker? Are you a doctor? Are you a hygienist or not? It is what it is. It's not your fault. And I'm not telling you to belittle the patient or scold the patient, but have a firm philosophy and have a firm wrap. And I do. And I have, by the way, asked me for the blog on what I'm talking about. Ask me for the hygiene recall protocol. Hygiene recall protocol. Just email it to me, the request. So what happens is that they will look at anybody in their schedule a couple days from now that had scale and root planing. And then their job is to give it to the insurance department of your department so that they can give you back what it's now paying and what the out-of-pocket will be. So let's fast forward now to that day. And some of the patients, thank God, will look fine, and this won't even be an issue. But let's be who we are. We're optimal oral health care takers. So are you all okay with watching perio neglect? Because I'm not. It's the absolute number one barometer on how long your work lasts, whether it's an implant or crown and bridge, or even your restorative operative work. Doesn't it resonate to you that it would feel great after having, it's like being on a diet for several years or several months and seeing the benefits of that diet Well, the benefits of you upping the ante on having patients be compliant is they come in with healthier, better tissue. And sometimes to get them there, you have to rescale and replane them. And if you walk in and say that to them, the number one thing 80% of them are going to ask you is, what's my out-of-pocket? And if you don't have that information right there, what happens is that becomes a nothing visit, and it becomes 35 minutes of your hour to find out what the coverage would be. And maybe you get it, maybe you don't. Or maybe the patient says, you know what, can't we just clean it today and get back to this next time? This, my friends, colleagues, is not about you ripping anybody off. It's not about you doing anything ever with me that doesn't need to be done. It's about, why did you scale them and root plane them to begin with if it wasn't intended to keep them that way? So there's one element of a morning meeting. So in my morning meeting, we're saying, anybody on today's schedule, history of scaling and root planing. And it reminds the hygienist of such a thing. What else? I want them to be prepared to ask the patient how recent work feels to them. You know, don't you want to know? And what about researching the charts? My staff gets there 30 minutes before patient care. If you're walking in 5 minutes before patient care, then I already know what your office is about. And you could be successful. Some weeks you're really good, some weeks you're not. Eventually, it'll catch up with you. It'll catch up with you because everything counts for long-term success in a fee and a primarily fee-for-service practice. Everything counts. Having a quality morning meeting, having quality information at your fingertips. And, you know, it may be a paragraph in their notes last time about them considering treating a certain section of their mouth. And if you don't have that, and maybe you're a little busy that day, and maybe you're a little behind, then maybe that conversation doesn't happen on that day. And the conversation doesn't happen that day, and maybe even if you did everything perfect, the patient would say, yeah, you know what, not yet. And most of the time, by the way, that is what it is. Most of the time, people have many other things to spend their disposable income on than their oral health care. But some of this stuff is not negotiable. Not in my office. I mean, when I say not negotiable, it's not, we will not present it. Like, I had a patient on Thursday of this week, came in, reported pain on his upper right. He had an abscess, small one, but an abscess above an existing crown. And guess what? Because we take proper x-rays as designated by the ADA and designated by me, and we don't just blow by that. He had another abscess. This is a 80-year-old man with most of his teeth. Guess what? I did everything right, everything I'm telling you to do. And he wanted to think about it, even though he came in with pain. And I'm sure it was about money. I'm sure it was. But how can you not at least present needed work? This is, you know what I say a lot to my patients that I want you to hear? I tell them that my goal as a dentist, and for my older colleagues listening, any of my colleagues, it's a good way to be. I say, my goal as a dentist is to have my patients, imagine a patient in hygiene, live a life where their oral health is at the optimal level. Everything from their gum health. I didn't say that they have to replace every missing tooth in their mouth or that they must have the most beautiful smile. I did not say that. Because you can have good oral health without all that. And not most of my patients couldn't begin to afford replacing every missing tooth or restoring a crooked smile or even a smile stained with old resins that aren't decayed but just don't look the best. But my approach is comprehensive, and it always remains that, and yours should be too. And what that does, that's my staple. My staple, and I'll tell them, is for you to not come in here ever. If you came to me with teeth that I thought I could save and have you take them out and put them on the tray, and then we'll clean the rest of your teeth. Not unless that's what you came to me with. That's my goal. Not just now, but when you come in here in your 80s and 90s. It's a good way to be. So I guess the takeaway from today is revisit your insurance plans. Do you really need all of them? Can you start a plan that may take you several years to break away from them? 2, are you having morning meetings or not? And do you understand the value of that? Are you having monthly meetings to address the bigger issues, the directional changes of your office? Are you set up to fail? Do you do anything at the new patient visit call to advocate the patient who hasn't been in a while, who may indicate need to bring in a significant other? Do you have easy and multiple financial options for patients readily available? And do you know how to use them? And when I say that to you, I'm talking about Lending Club, Green Sky, Care Credit. Do you really know how to use all those things for patients that need them? Because we live and die by that. And you need more than one company, because those companies use, whether you know it or not, different credit background checks. So somebody might get denied from one company I just mentioned and be approved by another. I hope this is helping some of you. It sure feels real to me at this end. And I hope I get to meet you either one of my courses on the road or in my office. But stay tuned to the Lionhearted. Have a great week next week. Thanks.